I found my father's second phone 3 days after his funeral. It was wrapped in a plastic bag, buried beneath 20 years of Christmas decorations in our garage. I wasn't even looking for it. Instead, my fingers brushed against something hard and rectangular hidden inside a box labeled MISC 1997. The phone was old. The kind you keep hidden for a reason. I should have left it there. I should have thrown it away. But I didn't, because when I pressed the power button, just to see if it still worked, it came to life. And on that small pixelated screen, I saw a text message that made my blood run cold. "Robert, she's asking questions again. We need to talk." The message was from 2 weeks before Dad died. 2 weeks before the heart attack that took him at 58, leaving me, my sister Emma, and Mom to pick up the pieces of a life that suddenly felt incomplete. Here's the thing about my father. Robert James Mitchell was the most honest man I'd ever known. He coached Little League for 12 years. He volunteered at the soup kitchen every Thursday. He never missed a single one of my soccer games, not even when I rode the bench for an entire season. When I was 7, he drove back to a convenience store 40 minutes away because the cashier had given him an extra $5 in change by mistake. That was my dad. That was the man we buried. So why did he have a secret phone? I stood there in that dusty garage, holding this device like it was a live grenade. And I felt the first crack form in the foundation of everything I thought I knew. The fluorescent light above me flickered, casting shadows across boxes labeled with Mom's careful handwriting. Family photos, tax, a life documented, organized, normal. But nothing about this phone was normal. I scrolled through the messages. There weren't many, maybe 20 conversations total, all with the same contact. Just the letter M, no full name, no other identifier. The messages went back 3 years, short, careful exchanges that said everything and nothing at all. Same time next week? Yes. The usual place. Me too. Soon my hands were shaking. I sat down right there on the concrete floor, surrounded by boxes of our family's past. And I kept reading. Each message was a small explosion in my chest. Each one changed the shape of the man I thought I knew. There were no explicit confessions. No smoking gun, but the pattern was clear, the intimacy undeniable. My father, the man who kissed my mother goodbye every single morning for 35 years. The man who still held her hand during movies. The man who renewed their vows on their 30th anniversary, had been having an affair. The garage suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. I couldn't breathe. I must have sat there for an hour, maybe more, just staring at that phone. Part of me wanted to smash it against the wall, destroy the evidence, pretend I'd never found it. Protect Mom, protect Emma, protect the memory of the man we just eulogized with words like faithful and devoted and irreplaceable. But another part of me, the part that won, needed to know the truth. I pocketed the phone and went back inside. Mom was in the kitchen, moving through the motions of making dinner she wouldn't eat. She'd lost 12 pounds since Dad died. The word tasted like poison. Still looking. That night I waited until Mom went to bed before I really dug into the phone. I sat in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by soccer trophies and participation ribbons, and I became a detective investigating my own father. The contacts were minimal, just M, Mom's old number, and one labeled office that I recognized as Dad's accounting firm. The call log showed regular calls to M, usually lasting 10 to 15 minutes, always in the middle of the day. Tuesday afternoons, Thursday mornings, Sunday evenings when Dad claimed he was going for his health walks. My father was meticulous. Even his affair was organized, scheduled, consistent. I felt sick. The photo gallery is what broke me. There were only 4 pictures, but they were enough. A woman's hand reaching across a table, fingers intertwined with my father's. The familiar gold watch he wore every day, visible on his wrist. A sunset taken from what looked like a lake pier. A blurry selfie, clearly taken by accident, showing part of a woman's face. Dark hair, a smile. She looked young, younger than Mom, maybe even younger than me, and I was 32. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. When I came back, I noticed something I'd missed before. A calendar app. Dad had used it to mark occasions, appointments. I opened it with the kind of dread you feel right before you see something you can't unsee. The entries were coded. Lunch M appeared every 2 weeks, going back years. Weekend trip showed up 4 times, aligned with conferences Dad had attended, or claimed to have attended. Anniversary appeared on a date in June, but it wasn't my parents' anniversary. That was October. He'd been celebrating an anniversary with someone else. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake up Mom and show her, force her to see that the man she was mourning, the man whose shirts she still slept in, didn't exist. Not the way she thought. Not the way any of us thought. But I couldn't do it. Not yet, because if I was going to destroy my mother's world, I needed to be absolutely certain. I needed the whole truth, not just fragments of it. Before I tell you what I did next, if you're following this story and wondering what you would do in my position, hit that like button. You're going to want to remember this channel, because what I discovered over the next week made this secret phone look like just the beginning. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I'm a high school history teacher, and I'd already taken bereavement leave for the funeral, but I couldn't face a classroom full of teenagers when my entire reality was crumbling. I told my principal I had the flu, another lie to add to the growing pile. Emma called around 10. My sister, 2 years younger than me, living in Seattle with her husband and twin daughters. She'd flown back for the funeral but had to leave the day after. She had no idea what I'd found. "How's Mom doing?" she asked, her voice carrying that particular tone of exhaustion that comes with managing toddlers and grief simultaneously. "She's managing," I said, watching Mom through my bedroom window as she sat motionless in Dad's chair on the back porch. She'd been sitting there for an hour just staring at the bird feeder Dad had built. "Em, did Dad ever seem different to you? Like he was hiding something?" Silence on the other end. Then carefully, "Why are you asking? Just answer the question." "Marcus, what's going on?" "Marcus, that's me. Marcus James Mitchell, named after my father's father, carrying a legacy that suddenly felt like a burden." "Did he?" I pressed. Emma sighed. "Everyone has secrets, Mark. That doesn't mean..." "What kind of secrets?" "Small ones. Normal ones." She paused. "Dad was a good man. The best man I've ever known, except maybe Daniel. You're not going to find anything that changes that." But I already had. I didn't tell her. I couldn't. Not over the phone. Maybe not ever. Instead, I changed the subject, asked about the twins, and promised to check in on Mom daily. When we hung up, I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. I spent the afternoon researching the usual place mentioned in the texts. I needed to find it. I started with Dad's credit card statements from the past year. I told myself I was just being thorough. A pattern emerged quickly. Every 2 weeks, a charge at a restaurant called the Riverside Grill, about 30 miles from our house. The amounts were always similar. 2 entrees, usually wine. The charges lined up perfectly with the lunch M entries in his calendar. I found the restaurant's website, upscale but not flashy, waterfront seating, the kind of place you go when you want privacy, but not complete isolation. The kind of place you take someone you're trying to impress. My father had taken someone there, someone who wasn't my mother. Regularly, for years, I got in my car and drove. The Riverside Grill sat at the edge of a small lake, surrounded by oak trees that had probably been there for 100 years. It was beautiful, in the way things are when they're designed to facilitate romance. White tablecloths, soft lighting even in the afternoon, a deck that extended over the water. I walked in like I belonged there, like I was meeting someone for lunch instead of investigating my dead father's double life. The hostess, a young woman with auburn hair and a professional smile, greeted me warmly. "Table for one?" "Actually, I'm trying to find someone who might have eaten here regularly, a friend of my father's." The lie came easily now. He passed away recently, and I'm trying to track down some of his close friends. His name was Robert Mitchell. He would have come here with a woman, probably every couple of weeks. The smile faltered. I'm sorry for your loss, but I can't really. Please. I pulled out my phone, showed her a picture of Dad from the funeral program. He was a regular here for years. I just need a name, that's all. She looked at the photo for a long moment. Recognition flickered across her face. I'm really not supposed to. I know. You understand that, don't you? She glanced around the mostly empty restaurant. Lunchtime rush was still an hour away. When she looked back at me, there was sympathy in her eyes. Mr. Mitchell always sat at table 7. On the deck, he always came with the same woman. They seemed close. Do you know her name? No, but she called him Bobby. No one else ever called him that. Bobby. Dad hated that nickname. He'd always insisted on Robert. Always. What did she look like? The hostess hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. Late 30s, maybe 40. Dark hair, usually pulled back. Professional. She always dressed really well. Carried herself like, I don't know, like someone important. Did they seem happy? It was a stupid question, but I needed to know. Yes, she said softly. They did. I'm sorry. I left the restaurant feeling like I was walking through water. Everything was heavy, distorted, wrong. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called the one person I thought might have answered. James Morrison, Dad's best friend since college. The best man at my parents' wedding. How are you holding up? His voice was warm, concerned, familiar. Uncle James, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Anything. Did Dad have secrets? The pause told me everything before he said a word. What kind of secrets, Marcus? You know what kind. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear him breathing on the other end. Could almost see him sitting in his home office, trying to decide how much truth to tell. Your father was a complex man, James finally said. He loved your mother. Never doubt that. That's not an answer. Marcus, was he having an affair? Silence. Not the silence of confusion, but the silence of confirmation. Oh God, I whispered, you knew. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Because what I think is that my father was a liar who betrayed my mother for years while everyone smiled and pretended he was a saint. Don't, James said sharply. Don't reduce him to that. For everyone's sake. My mother deserves the truth. Does she? James asked quietly. Does she really? Think about what you're about to do. Think about what you're about to take from her. He already took it. You're just deciding whether to destroy her with it. His voice was gentle now, almost pleading. Marcus, I loved your father like a brother. He made mistakes. We all do. But he was trying to make things right. He was trying to what? I've said too much already. Uncle James, I'm sorry, Marcus. Truly am, but this isn't my story to tell. He hung up. I sat there in the parking lot of the Riverside Grill, staring at my phone. And I realized something. This wasn't just about an affair. James wouldn't be this protective, this careful, if it was just about Dad sleeping with another woman. There was something else, something bigger. The messages on the secret phone. She's asking questions again. Who was asking questions? And about what? I drove back home with my mind racing. Mom was where I'd left her, sitting in Dad's chair, lost in whatever memories she was choosing to hold on to. I kissed her forehead and told her I loved her, and I meant it fiercely. Then I went back to my room, and I did something I'm not proud of. I hacked into Dad's email. I'd helped him set up his accounts years ago, back when he was still struggling with technology. I knew his password recovery questions. Mother's maiden name, first pet, street he grew up on. Within 20 minutes, I was in. The inbox was exactly what you'd expect from an accountant. Client communications, firm memos, newsletters, but I wasn't looking in the inbox. I was looking in the trash. People forget that deleted doesn't mean gone. Not really, not if you know where to look. And what I found in Dad's deleted folder made the affair look like a minor indiscretion. There were emails from M, hundreds of them, going back over a decade. The earlier ones were professional, formal, subject lines like quarterly review and account reconciliation. They were addressed to someone named Margaret Hendricks, and they discussed financial matters related to something called the Hendricks Trust. But as I scrolled forward in time, the emails changed. The subject lines became more personal. Thinking of you, last Tuesday. You need to be more careful. The content shifted from business to barely concealed intimacy. And then about 3 years ago, the tone changed again. Robert, we need to discuss what happens if the truth comes out. The firm is asking questions about the Hendricks account transfers. I'm scared. What if they find out what we did? We should have never started this. This wasn't just an affair. My father, the honest accountant, the man who drove 40 minutes to return $5, had been involved in something illegal. I felt like I was falling. I kept reading. The emails became more panicked as they got more recent. Margaret, whoever she was clearly terrified. But they hadn't covered them well enough. Because 6 months ago, someone named David Kelso had started emailing Dad. The subject lines were professional, but the underlying message was clear. Irregularities in the Hendricks Trust, immediate response required, second notice, account discrepancies, final warning, audit scheduled. Dad had responded to each one, deflecting, explaining, justifying. He knew he was caught. He just didn't know how to get out. The last email from David Kelso was dated 3 weeks before Dad's heart attack. Robert, I will be at your office Monday at 9 a.m. This has gone beyond my authority. The board is involved. I suggest you bring your attorney. Dad never made it to that meeting. He died the Saturday before, and suddenly his heart attack didn't seem quite so random. I need to pause here and tell you something. When you discover that someone you loved wasn't who you thought they were, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in waves, each revelation hitting you like a physical blow. The affair was wave 1. The embezzlement, because that's clearly what this was wave 2. But I wasn't prepared for wave 3. I was so deep in the emails that I almost missed it. A reply from Margaret, buried in a thread about meeting times, that included a single line at the bottom. How is she doing? Does she suspect anything? She, not your wife. Not Linda, just she. I scrolled back through the emails with new eyes, looking for any reference to this mysterious she. I found them scattered throughout the correspondence. Oblique references, careful language, but always she. Always important enough to ask about, but never named. She had a good day today. The nurses said she was more responsive. The new medication seems to be helping. She recognized me yesterday. I can't keep this from her forever, Margaret. She deserves to know. Nurses, medication, recognition. My father was writing about someone who was sick. Someone who was being cared for. Someone who didn't know something they deserved to know. I searched his deleted folder for anything medical, any hospital bills, any insurance claims I might have missed when settling the estate. Nothing. Whatever this was, Dad had kept it entirely separate from the family finances. But then I remembered something. Every month, there was a withdrawal from Dad's personal account. $5,000. Regular as clockwork. It went back years in the bank statements. And I'd assumed it was just Dad being careful with retirement savings, keeping money aside. Mom had made the same assumption. $5,000 a month. $60,000 a year. For at least a decade. That's care. Medical care. Someone was sick. Someone Dad was paying to take care of. Someone Margaret knew about. Someone who apparently deserved to know some truth that Dad had been keeping from her. I sat back, my mind trying to piece together a picture from fragments. An affair, embezzlement, a sick woman receiving expensive care, a secret that could destroy everything. And then it hit me. Dad had another family. The thought arrived fully formed, devastating in its clarity. He had another life, another relationship, maybe another child. The affair with Margaret wasn't just romance, it was love. Real, sustained, decade-long love. and they'd had a child together. Or maybe Margaret had a child from before and that child was sick, and Dad had been funneling money from this Hendricks trust to pay for care. It made a horrible kind of sense. The regular meetings, the intimacy in the messages, the financial impropriety, all of it pointed to a man trying to maintain two separate lives, two separate families, and failing at both. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I wanted to be wrong. I needed to be wrong. There was one way to find out. I opened a new search and typed in Margaret Hendricks, along with our city name. The results were immediate. Margaret Ann Hendricks, age 43, Senior Vice President at Hendricks Financial Group. The same firm where my father had worked for 25 years. The same firm where he'd been a partner. Where he'd built his reputation as the most trustworthy accountant in the state. Her photo showed an elegant woman with dark hair pulled back in a professional bun. She had kind eyes and a serious mouth, and she looked exactly like the kind of person my father would fall in love with. I clicked through to the firm's website. Hendricks Financial Group was a family business founded by Margaret's grandfather in 1952. Her father, William Hendricks, had run it until his death 8 years ago, at which point Margaret and her brother David had taken over. David Kelso must have been using their mother's maiden name. But he was Margaret's brother, which meant he discovered that his own sister and his father's most trusted partner had been stealing from the family trust. The family trust, of course. The Hendricks Trust wasn't just any client account. It was the family's money, old money, probably significant money, and somehow Dad and Margaret had been moving funds from that trust to pay for someone's medical care. But whose? I looked at the photo of Margaret again. In the professional headshot, she was alone. No mention of a husband or children in her bio. No family photos on her social media, which was sparse and carefully curated. I needed more information. I needed to know who was sick, who Dad had been supporting. It was always transferred to the same account, but the account number meant nothing to me. I needed the actual recipient name, which would require calling the bank and probably committing some light fraud. I was preparing to do exactly that when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me click accept. Hello? Is this Marcus Mitchell? A woman's voice, controlled but strained. Yes. Who is this? My name is Margaret Hendricks. I think we need to talk about your father. The world stopped. How did you get my number? It was all I could think to say. Your father kept it in his contacts, under in case of emergency. I found his personal effects at the office, the ones he left in his desk drawer. She paused. Including a phone I don't think your mother knows about. So she had the original. Before you tell your mother something that isn't complete. How much of the truth? The affair? The embezzlement? The person you're both taking care of? Silence. Then softly all of it, but not over the phone. Can you meet me? Give me one reason why I should. Because your father loved you very much, and he made me promise that if anything ever happened to him, I would make sure you understood why he did what he did. I owe him that much. I owe him everything. Her voice broke on the last word. The Riverside Grill, I said. Tomorrow. Noon. Table 7. I'll be there. She hung up before I could change my mind. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the man I thought I knew with the man who was emerging from the evidence. Dad, who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework, and cried at my high school graduation. Dad, who kissed Mom every morning and held her hand and renewed their vows. Dad who lied, who stole, who loved someone else. Who was he really? Morning came eventually. I moved through it mechanically, made coffee, pretended to eat breakfast, told Mom I had some errands to run. She nodded without really seeing me, still lost in her own grief. I arrived at the Riverside Grill 15 minutes early. I wanted to see Margaret before she saw me, wanted to observe her without the performance of our meeting. but she was already there, sitting at table 7, staring out at the water. She looked smaller in person than in her photo. Fragile, like she might break if you spoke too loudly. I walked over and sat down without announcing myself. She turned, and I saw my father's expression in her eyes, that same careful sadness he'd worn in those last few months. I'd thought he was just getting older, slowing down. I'd been so blind, Marcus, she said. Not a question. She knew who I was. Tell me everything, I said, and don't leave anything out. Margaret took a deep breath, and then she began. Your father and I met 26 years ago. I was 17, fresh out of high school, working part-time at my father's firm while I went to college. Robert was the new accountant my father had just hired. Everyone loved him. She smiled, but it was sad. I fell in love with him immediately, the way only a 17-year-old can, with that absolute certainty that this person is the only person who will ever matter. But Robert was married. He had a son, a baby boy he talked about constantly. He was decent. He never encouraged my attention. But something changed, I said. 3 years later, I was in a car accident. A bad one. I was in the hospital for weeks. And Robert, he visited me every day. He said it was because my father asked him to, because the firm was family, and I was family. But I knew. I could see it in the way he looked at me. He felt it too. She took a sip of water, her hand trembling slightly. We fought it for another year. We tried so hard to do the right thing. But eventually we stopped trying. We started meeting. Just coffee at first, then lunch, then you had an affair, yes. She met my eyes. We had an affair. I'm not proud of it. I'm not making excuses. But I loved him, Marcus. I loved him more than I've ever loved anyone, and he loved me. That was real, even if it was wrong. So you've been together for over 20 years. No, she shook her head. We ended it. 5 years after it started, we ended it. Robert couldn't live with the guilt. He loved you and Emma. He wanted to be faithful to his vows, to be the man he'd promised to be. So we stopped. We remained friends, colleagues, but nothing more. Then what changed? The messages on the phone, they're recent. Margaret looked down at her hands. What changed was that I got pregnant. The air left my lungs. It was before we ended it, she continued quietly. Right before. I found out 2 weeks after we decided to stop seeing each other. I didn't tell him at first. I thought maybe I could handle it alone, raise the child without him knowing. But I couldn't. I was terrified, and I was alone, and I needed him. Did he leave Mom? No. He wanted to, but I wouldn't let him. By then, I understood what I'd be taking from him. From you. I couldn't do it. So we made an arrangement. He would help me financially, be there when he could, but he would stay with his family. Our child would know him as Uncle Robert, a family friend. It wasn't perfect, but it was what we had. You had his child. I said it slowly, trying to make it feel real. I have a half-sibling. Had, Margaret whispered. You had a half-sibling. Past tense. The nurses, the medication, the recognition. What happened? Her name was Sarah. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Sarah Ann Hendricks. She was beautiful, Marcus. Brilliant and kind, and everything good about both of us. We fought it for years. The best doctors, the best treatments. Your father spent every dollar he could find. We tried everything. But last year the cancer came back, worse than before. The treatments stopped working. She needed experimental therapy, specialized care, kind that insurance doesn't cover, the kind that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. So Dad embezzled from your family trust. We embezzled, Margaret corrected. Together, I helped him. I knew every transfer, approved every payment. It was my trust, my family's money. I convinced myself I was entitled to it, but I was just redirecting my inheritance early. But it wasn't legal. What we did wasn't legal. Your brother found out. David found out 6 months ago. He was going to go to the police, prosecute both of us. She stopped, swallowing hard. Then Sarah died, 3 weeks before your father. 3 weeks before the audit that would have sent us both to prison. The heart attack, it wasn't random, it was grief. Dad died of a broken heart, I said. He died loving 2 families and failing them both. Margaret wiped her eyes. He died knowing that Sarah was gone. that your mother would eventually find out the truth, that everything he'd built would collapse. I think his heart just gave up. We sat in silence. Around us, the restaurant filled with lunch crowd, people laughing and eating and living lives uncomplicated by secrets. I envied them. "There's more," Margaret said finally. "Something you need to know before you decide what to do with this information." "How could there possibly be more?" She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Your father wrote this 2 days before he died. He brought it to our last meeting, made me promise to give it to you if anything happened to him. He knew he was dying, Marcus. Maybe not consciously, but somewhere deep inside he knew." I took the envelope. My name was written on it in Dad's careful handwriting. "Read it," Margaret said. "Then decide who he really was." She stood, placed money on the table for her untouched water, and walked away. I watched her go, this woman who'd loved my father, who'd shared a child with him, who'd committed crimes with him. This woman who was a stranger but also somehow family. I waited until I was back in my car to open the envelope. I'd moved past shock into something colder, clearer. The letter was 3 pages, front and back. Dad's handwriting, precise as always. "Marcus, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've learned things about me that I never wanted you to know. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for all of it. I want to explain, but I know that explanations aren't the same as justifications. What I did was wrong. All of it. The affair, the lies, the money. I knew it was wrong while I was doing it, and I did it anyway. But I need you to understand the context, even if it doesn't excuse anything. I met Margaret when I was 28 years old. Your mother and I had been married for 5 years. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. We had you, and you were everything I'd ever wanted in a son. My life was good, stable, predictable. And then I met this 17-year-old girl who looked at me like I hung the moon, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt since I was 17 myself. It was intoxicating and wrong, and I should have stopped it immediately. But I didn't. I fell in love with Margaret. Not the way I loved your mother, which was comfortable and deep and rooted in years of shared life. I loved Margaret the way you love a dream, intense and desperate and impossible to maintain. We had an affair. I'm not going to describe it or justify it. It happened. It was real. And when she got pregnant, I had to make a choice. I could leave your mother, tear apart our family, break your heart and Emma's heart, all to be with Margaret and this child who would grow up knowing her father had abandoned his other children to be with her. Or I could stay, be the father you deserve, and try to be there for Sarah in whatever way I could. I chose to stay. Margaret agreed. It seemed like the right choice at the time. Maybe it was. I don't know anymore. My secret daughter. I loved her the same way I loved you and Emma. Completely and unconditionally. I was there when she was born. I went to her school plays and her piano recitals. I taught her to ride a bike, the same way I taught you. I was her father in every way except the one that mattered. I couldn't claim her. I couldn't put her pictures on my desk or talk about her at family dinners. I lived 2 lives, and both of them were real, and neither of them was complete. When Sarah got sick, I would have done anything to save her. Anything. The money from the Hendricks Trust, that was wrong. I know it was wrong, but what was I supposed to do? Let my daughter die when I had access to funds that could save her? Margaret and I told ourselves we were borrowing, that we'd pay it back. But we both knew the truth. We were stealing from her family, from the clients who trusted us. We were criminals. And then Sarah died anyway, and it was all for nothing. I can't tell you how that feels, Marcus. I'm writing this because I can feel something changing in me. My chest hurts all the time now. The doctors say it's stress, that I need to slow down, but I think it's guilt. I think my body is rejecting the life I've built on lies. If I die before the truth comes out, I want you to know this. Your mother never knew. She never suspected. Every kiss I gave her was genuine. Every I love you was real. My love for her was never a lie, even when everything else was. You have a choice to make now. You can tell your mother the truth. Show her this letter. Destroy the memory she has of me. That's your right. I've stolen your right to ignorance, and I'm sorry for that. Or you can let her keep believing in the man she married. Let her grieve for the husband who loved her for 35 years. Let her die someday still believing in our love. I don't know which choice is right. Whatever you decide, know this. You were the best thing I ever did, Marcus. You and Emma. Being your father was the purest, truest part of my life. When I was with you, I wasn't lying. When I coached your soccer team and helped with your homework and taught you to drive, I was exactly who I appeared to be. You were my redemption, even if I didn't deserve it. I love you. I'm sorry. Dad, I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water gold and orange. Dad would have loved this view. He always loved sunsets. I thought about Mom, sitting alone in his chair, holding on to a love story that was both true and false. I thought about Emma, raising her daughters with bedtime stories about Grandpa Robert, the kindest man who ever lived. I thought about Sarah, a sister I'd never known, who died believing she had an uncle who visited her, but not a father who loved her. I thought about Dad, carrying all these secrets, loving all these people, failing all of them in different ways. And I thought about the choice he'd left me with. Truth or kindness, justice or mercy. I started the car and drove home. Mom was in the kitchen when I walked in, finally eating something. Soup from a can, but it was progress. "Hi, honey," she said, smiling at me. It was the first real smile I'd seen from her in weeks. I found the angel. It was in the garage, right where I told you to look. "Tell me about your day," I sat, and I realized that I'd already made my decision. Some truths don't set you free. Some truths just destroy everything in their path, leaving nothing but rubble where love used to be. Dad had made terrible choices. He'd lied and cheated and stolen. He'd been selfish and weak and human. But he'd also been the man who taught me to tie my shoes and believe in myself. He'd been the husband who made my mother laugh and feel cherished for 35 years. He'd been the father who tried to save 2 families and ended up breaking them both. He'd been complicated, real, flawed. He'd been my father. "My day was fine, Mom," I said, taking her hand. "Just ran some errands. Nothing important." She squeezed my fingers, her wedding ring still loose, but still there. "Your father always said you had a good heart, Marcus, that you always knew the right thing to do." I thought about the letter in my pocket, about the secret phone buried back in the garage. About Sarah, whose name I would never speak aloud. "Dad was wrong about a lot of things," I said, "but maybe he was right about that." That night, I burned the letter. I threw the secret phone into the lake. I deleted the emails I'd found and cleared Dad's deleted folder permanently. I made a choice. Maybe the wrong one. Maybe the right one. I'll never really know. But here's what I do know. Mom lived another 5 years after Dad died, and she died believing in their love. She died happy, surrounded by family, with his picture on her nightstand. That's worth something. That has to be worth something. Emma never found out. Her daughters grew up hearing stories about their grandfather, the hero. They believe in goodness because of him. And Margaret, I met with her one more time. I told her I wasn't going to expose what happened, that I was going to let the past stay buried. She cried and thanked me, and we made an agreement. We would honor Sarah by living better than the lies that created her. She left Hendrick's financial group shortly after, started over somewhere new. I heard through the grapevine that she dedicated her life to childhood cancer research, funding it with what remained of her inheritance after she paid back every penny Dad had taken. Maybe that's redemption. Maybe not, but it's something. As for me, I keep the secret. I carry it every day. Sometimes it feels like a burden. Sometimes it feels like a gift. The gift of letting the people I love keep their innocence, their faith in the goodness of the man we buried. I think about Dad often, about the complexity of human beings, the way we can be heroes and villains in the same lifetime. The way love can be real even when it's built on lies. The way a single person can contain multitudes, contradictions, truths that can't coexist but somehow do. He was a good man who did bad things. He was a bad man who did good things. He was both and neither and everything in between. He was my father, and in the end, I chose to remember the best parts of him. Not because they're all that existed, but because memory is selective, and kindness is a choice, and some truths don't need to be told. If you've stayed with me through this story, if you understand why I made the choice I made, then you know that life is never as simple as we want it to be. People are complicated, love is messy, and sometimes the right thing to do is to protect the people we love from truths that would only hurt them. Before you go, hit that subscribe button, because all of us have secrets, or we're keeping secrets for someone else. All of us are trying to figure out what to do with the complicated truths we discover about the people we love. And maybe, by sharing our stories, we can help each other carry the weight. My father was Robert James Mitchell, and this is the secret I'll carry for the rest of my life.